Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar podcast, here to review the Grand Prix of Alabama at Barber Motorsports Park as IndyCar's very own March Madness comes to an end. An interesting one, Alabama. It wasn't a barnstorm by any means, but still plenty to talk about, and there's certainly very interesting elements to that race.
Yeah, the way I would put it is it's been a wonderfully manic start to the season. And yeah, Barber was maybe the most slow burner of all the races, but you are right, Dan. There's definitely storylines to come from it. Obviously, Palou as per, but there was definitely jeopardy in there for him. There was obviously Graham Rahal getting his podium as well. We had some big accidents as well in practice and qualifying that we will debrief too. So yeah, not a shortage of storylines. April's going to be a bit bizarre. It's kind of like not really a mini off season because it's only 3 weeks, but we used to just like relentless IndyCar every weekend, which has been very, very welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of good to have a little bit of a break. We do to find podcast content, but we'll come to that matter later on in the coming days and weeks. But Barber Motorsports Park was kind of exactly as we've become accustomed to in recent years, and that was Álex Palou domination. We know last year in the Honda, which I was very sad to not see this weekend, by the way. I like the Honda last year.
That was a great livery.
I hope they bring it back at some point this year. But it wasn't quite the same domination as last year. Last year, he was an absolute class apart in comparison to the rest of the field. I mean, he won by 16 seconds. This was 13 seconds in the end. Wasn't quite the full picture. Obviously, Lundgaard had a quite significant error on his final pit stop, which did cost him a lot of time. Whether he would have won or not, I'm sure we'll debrief on that a little bit later, but that's almost impossible to tell. But it's kind of the same beat down the field that we're kind of used to with Palou, especially at road courses in recent years. It was a fairly comfortable pole position. It never felt like anybody was going to topple him all throughout the session. And then race day comes, takes lead at the start. Maybe didn't quite open up the gap we sometimes see him build up, particularly on primes. He did have a used set of primaries, which I know they had a few concerns about heading into the race, but it didn't prove to be too much of an issue. So he kind of romped home at the end, and then once Lundgaard faltered, that was day done. Another Barber race with no caution, the second one in a row, and it means the first three road street races of the year, we haven't really had a meaningful caution, because St. Petersburg, we had kind of that lap one, which didn't really make a difference because it was lap one. The Arlington one, which we thought would, and then it went yellow straight away, so therefore it made no difference unless your name was Felix Rosenqvist. And then this one had no caution at all. So we're kind of yet to have a significant caution, like the start of last year. And Kirkwood and Palou were dominating at the start of last year. It's vaguely similar, isn't it, to what we're experiencing 12 months ago? But just to touch back on Palou, I mean, yeah, superb, exactly what we expect. I mean, there's not really too much we can say now about repeating ourselves from the last 18 months or so. But yeah, still on the leader championship. We better emphasize that the championship is still open currently. But yeah, exactly what we've become accustomed to, and once again, faultless, really.
Yeah, it's a funny one to categorize, really, because it was going to be dominant, and it ultimately was dominant, but there was that portion, obviously, or based on the final pit cycle, where the dominance was in, I think as Palou said, big danger. And yeah, that was the race was kind of typical as Palou makes them when, there aren't cautions and he's out front. Like, you didn't really see him. There wasn't that much going on. And then all comes alive because of lap traffic, ultimately. And it was a crazy picture, really, as he's exiting the pits off his final stop, and Mick Schumacher's side by side and not yielding. Palou ends up in the grass and, yes, ultimately gets ahead of him. But then you have Schumacher's teammate Louis Foster that he's having to defend from. And then within a lap or two, he's on the back of Dennis Hauger, who's defending very strongly. Like, Palou had attempted a couple of passes actually on Hauger, and Hauger had held on around the outside, I think, into turn 5 and then again down the hill in turn 7, which was kind of crazy, really. And then Palou was ultimately decisive to get past. But the race win at that point was in real jeopardy, because ultimately Palou was the class of the field. But yeah, it was in doubt at that point. Like, because if Lundgaard had had a good stop, I think Palou's lead engineer, Julian Robertson, theorized that, he said it would be really close. He thought Palou might have come out in front. Palou said that even if he did come out behind Lundgaard, probably being on warm tyres, he would have been able to repass him. But it would have been close. Like, I'm not as certain as some of the people that this definitely lost Lundgaard a win. I know some people are kind of picturing it as though, like, this was Lundgaard's race to win. Ultimately, this was still another one of those races where Palou's pretty comfortable out front, and it's kind of a reminder while we are all talking about, oh my word, it's been such an exciting and competitive start to the season. We're going to have a title fight. You get this sort of race, particularly on a road course, and you're like, how's anyone going to stop this machine, particularly in this discipline? And ultimately, Palou has finished 3 races this year. He's won 2 of them. He's finished second in the other. He was crashed out in Phoenix. But it is eerily similar to the start of last season.
He crashed out in Phoenix depending on what starts you take. I'm not going to get involved in that. But what I would say about the Lundgaard battle is, I think considering how long it took Lundgaard to get Rahal, I don't see how he would have got Palou, considering Palou probably was coasting a little bit when he had that margin, and ultimately he could probably turn it on a little bit more should Lundgaard have been in that situation.
Yeah, ultimately nobody made inroads in that final stint. Like, he was very comfortably above 10 seconds out front, and yeah, you're right. Lundgaard did struggle to get past Rahal. Passing is tough around Barber. I think that's what made it maybe a little bit of a dual race at points. But yeah, it's actually worth mentioning, point you alluded to earlier, Dan, the reason that Palou kind of found himself in the situation where he was thrust out into the traffic is because on that third stint, he had to use a set of primaries that he'd used for, I think they said up to 10 laps in practice too, which Palou said is something they never, ever do. Like, they just don't use primaries. But the expectation all weekend was that the alternate tyre would be favoured in the race. And then, as Julian Robertson described it, apparently in warm-up, the tyre just tanked, and all of a sudden everyone was really panicked and they had to go back to a set of primaries they really didn't want to race on, which Palou basically stretched as long as he could, but couldn't get those extra few laps to have been able to clear that traffic because they were in such a dire state, basically. So, yeah, it was interesting to see that danger, because otherwise, like, I mean, the last stint once Lundgaard had his issue, I don't think we saw Palou from like the late 60s until he crossed the line and took the checkered flag.
And barely then, it was a late cut to him just coming around the final. Oh, he's here, he's won.
Yeah, I feel like it was quite familiar. Like, DHL are, they've got the dominant driver, but are they even getting the most airtime?
That's a good question. Someone should run analysis on which driver gets the most airtime every race. I tell you who gets the least, that's Marcus Armstrong. But everybody else, goodness knows. One thing that Palou does always say in every press conference, which makes me chuckle, especially given his dominance, he's always like, that was tough. That was tough. And it's like, you know, Alex, it's kind of difficult to believe you at points when you're winning 8 races a year. I mean, I've just looked at the transcript and he said tough 9 times in his press conference to describe that race. Like, I'm sure like Barber is a difficult track, Alex, particularly on kind of the physical standpoint, but is it really that tough every race like he makes it out to be? He always makes it sound. Of course it is from some perspective. Like, he makes it look so easy, and we take that for granted sometimes. But it does make me chuckle. What is competition thinking?
Yeah, this is I guess it's part of what makes Palou so almost endearing as a champion. He has that humility about him where he doesn't want to say like that was straightforward. And to be fair, like yesterday of all days, as we record on Monday, I actually genuinely think it probably was quite tough. I think there was probably quite a bit of stress in that mid portion. But again, like, Palou doesn't really feel stress. I mean, I don't think he was like in conversation while that was all happening about fuel numbers with Barry Wanzer, so he clearly wasn't panicking too much. But yeah, it was funny while I was actually writing up Palou's quotes after the race. I was like, I think he said tough probably in about like 4 or 5 separate quotes, to the extent I just kept having to remove it because I couldn't just keep having throughout the piece. That was really tough. That was really tough. So maybe cut about half of them. But yeah, it's just very Palou. He's very amusing in press, actually, to be fair. Like, I think he said when he caught the traffic, he was crying inside. And yeah, it's interesting, that traffic point. I know we discuss it a lot, and ultimately they have every right to fight, because I mean, it was interesting even seeing people try to unlap themselves, because I mean, ultimately, even if they unlap themselves, he was going to get past anyway. But I guess, yeah, you never know when a caution might fall. But Palou said he doesn't understand it 100%, but he understands it a little bit. So yeah, I don't think he was too frustrated by it, because okay, he's never going to be in that situation, but he also kind of understands if he was to be. But yeah, it's just kind of it's mad really that the only jeopardy that appeared was from the cars 23rd, 24th and 25th in the order.
And I think we probably need to pivot on to Christian Lundgaard, who comes second at Barber for the 2nd consecutive year, and it marks now 10 podiums in a row, which he's been on, which Álex Palou is also having to be on, which is just so funny. I mean, Lundgaard is probably the second best driver in the series on road courses. It's just the best driver in the series on road courses is always on every road course podium. So whatever Lundgaard does, he is always there. And it was close, as we said, and we'll never quite know what would have happened had he had a good pit stop. I think it's probably he'll finish just behind Palou, as you mentioned, based on a few factors that we've previously discussed. But I do want to touch on qualifying. So I do think that is letting Lundgaard down quite a lot. He's qualified 10th for Barber, and ultimately, if he's top 5, top 4, suddenly his race is a very different picture because he can gain a lot more positions at the start. He doesn't have to do as much overtaking. He's not held up by slower cars, and I feel like that's generally a point that is letting Lundgaard down. His racecraft is superb. He's one of the best in races. That's why we see him on the podium so often. But we don't often see him in the fast 6. He's often in the fast 12, but we don't often see him advance from there. And I think when you look at results like this, that probably is something which is ultimately letting him down. I feel like this isn't the first time we've seen it. This has happened before. And if he is qualifying better, would he be in contention for more victories? I think if he qualified in the top 4 or 5, he's certainly in a much better position for victory contention.
Yeah, I mean, the one that immediately springs to mind that was quite a similar drive to this actually was Long Beach last year, where he actually crashed in qualifying then, didn't he? But he was, back end of I think he crashed in the fast 12 and then came through, finished that race 3rd. But it was quite a similar drive. I don't know whether some of it might be partially an Aaron McLaren thing because he did still out-qualify Award this weekend. So if I was him, I wouldn't be overly stressed by it. I think he came into press after practice on Friday and did kind of earmark qualifying. He's aware that it's something he needs to work on. And then obviously the day after going and qualifying 10th when he'd been pretty quick through practice and probably should have been in the fast 6 really and made his job easier. It's a bit like what we spoke about with Kirkwood after Arlington, that he was having some kind of recovery. I think he gained more positions in the first 3 races than any other driver in the field. So, that is a place where there is a bit of room for improvement. But it was good fun seeing him kind of cut through the top 10 really, really decisively in that early stint. His racecraft is, I think, really, really impressive. So, it was a good drive. I completely agree. I think he's almost above and beyond the second best driver on road courses at the moment, I would say. It's really hard. It's impossible to say really what would have happened. He lost 10 seconds in the pits compared to what he would have done. He was just about within the window. I think the gap to Palou was around 28 seconds when he pitted. So, it would have been really touch and go. It could have been they'd come out almost side by side, at which point Palou would obviously have had the advantage on warmer tyres. And as I said earlier, even if he came out a little bit behind, he would have been on warmer tyres. But good drive from Lundgaard. And I think it's probably worth just touching on the rest of that team as well.
Yes, it was a bit of a weird weekend on Award's side. He couldn't really debrief as to why he finished 17th. He qualified in 12th, didn't have a fantastic start, and then never really made any progress from there. And it's a bit concerning that he kind of doesn't identify where he's lacking pace. And he started the year off, as you've mentioned, quietly, superbly, with 3 top 5 finishes in a row. And you look at a track where he's won out of the past, he's had a pole position out of the past, where McLaren have all round been pretty decent, Lundgaard's been quick, and he just seemed nowhere, really, absolutely nowhere, which is really strange and a bit of a concern. And that's something we generally struggle to see in McLaren. They're just so inconsistent car to car. Feels like one weekend Award's having a good weekend, maybe Lundgaard isn't, and then it switches, and then it's just really hard to decipher. And we'll obviously briefly touch on Nolan Segal in a minute. He finished 18th, which is his best result of the season. He was kind of battling with Award, only finished 1 position behind him. But it's a bit of a concern that we really struggle to see good pace across all 3 cars kind of ever.
Did we have a race like this last year from Award? This reminds me, obviously Lundgaard being a very big outlier, but I think it was Portland in 2004 where they were absolutely shocking across all 3 cars, and they were really confused. And I kind of thought last year they'd got this a bit out of their system, but yeah, if they want to be a championship winning outfit, they cannot afford weekends like this. And I mean, I don't know what went wrong with Lundgaard's bobble in the pits, but they can't afford things like that as well. But yeah, for O'Ward to be down there basically in a scrap with his struggling teammate Nolan Siegel, like, do you say well done to Nolan Siegel, he's scrapping with O'Ward? Or I guess it's more damning reflection on O'Ward, really, that he was down there fighting with Siegel. To be fair to Siegel, he did qualify 15th, which was, again, it's not what you're wanting from an Aaron McLaren driver, but you know, he could have been his teammates for 10th and 12th. This is definitely his best weekend of the season. But yeah, it's a weird weekend, given they were so good on the 7 side, and then the rest of the team was just nowhere.
What I would caveat that with, though, Siegel had a pretty good run here last year. He qualified 6th here last year and he finished in the top 10. And I kind of came into this weekend, I wrote in my preview thinking, okay, this could be a chance to really solidify himself. And I mean, we're not really seeing much better, which is ultimately a bit of a concern. But let's go on to another team with a very similar golfing performance, which might be of concern. But let's touch on the positives of it in Graham Rahal, the first podium since 2023, since he came second on the Indy road course, finished 3rd here in Barber, obviously unfortunately overtaken by Lundgaard with just a couple of laps to go, qualified 3rd, and then really kind of stayed there the entire race, which is really fantastic to see. It's a good story for Rahal, as I'm sure you mentioned in a minute. I was talking about fending off the bullshit across the last couple of months and years and whatever, and he's obviously aware of the criticism that he gets very well. But yeah, what a great story for Graham Rahal. It's been a difficult couple of years. The team have just been kind of just so inconsistent race to race. We've seen flashes, but nothing really ever materialised. And look, let's hope this isn't a flash, but Rahal kind of reminds us once every couple of years that he does still have it. Like, he still does have the capabilities to compete for podiums and to compete with the very best. I mean, he was kind of within an arm's length for Palou for quite a while. And I think he said it was the end of the 2nd stint. They just really kind of fell off the pace, which kind of extended that gap a little bit. But he was within touching distance of Palou for a large portion of the race. And ultimately, he drove a really, really strong race. You can't have really asked for much more from his perspective. And yeah, I mean, just what an encouraging story for the team, who just haven't seemed to have that thing click. Obviously, a lot of changes coming into this season as well. And look, we've still got a lot of the season to go to see if it does bear the fruits. But look, it's a positive start, at least on the road course side this season.
I'd kind of forgotten it had been that long since he was on the podium, because in the last couple of years, we've still had races like, I mean, you look at the Indy GP last year where he was it last year he was running second to Palou for a lot of it? I think it was, wasn't it, before he tumbled a little bit.
We had that late caution, didn't we, which saw him tumble.
Yeah, but because he's obviously had still some standout qualifiers, he's still run at the front on some road courses. I'd kind of forgotten it was all the way back in 23 that he'd had a podium. And I'd also forgotten that he only got the single podium in 23 as well. Like, I just...
He took a pole in Portland, didn't he?
I guess it just kind of outlines the fact that the team have really struggled to get over the line. But yeah, the last 2 years particularly have been wretched. Obviously, I mean, I think he was... I read a piece on him immediately after the race that you can go read on the DIVEBOMB site. But he'd had 7 years in the top 10 in the championship. He was 6th and 7th in 20 and 21. And then he's obviously had this really torrid downturn in recent years. And that culminated last year in finishing 19th in the standings. Over the last 2 years, he's only been in the top 10 on 8 occasions, only a single top 5, which came Portland last year, only 3 top 10s full stop last year. So this is really encouraging. I think more than anything, just the fact that they did manage to get over the line. I think actually his 15 crew lead the pit stop performance standings after 4 races, which is encouraging given some of the issues that they have had in pit lane points as well. But just all round, it was a really good performance. And unfortunately for them, it's another one of these situations, like is often the case when they're so good at the Indy GP and they don't, at least publicly, really know why. They don't really know why they were so quick this weekend. But I think for Rahal, it was just, I mean, he was, obviously you mentioned like he'd addressed the BS, not directly addressing it, but kind of just referring to people on Twitter who say he's past it and can't qualify and stuff. And to be fair to him, this is the second time in the first 4 races he has been on the second row qualifying third 2 times in 3 races, and 2 top 10s as well. Obviously held on for a top 10 in Phoenix, so that's already, he's only one off his tally from the entirety of last year in the first 4 races, which is impressive stuff. But yeah, you referred to the dumbasses on the internet, I think, and he's acutely aware of what people talk about and people saying that he's past it and nearing retirement. And okay, he is, he's getting on and he is nearing retirement, but you do get these performances when he has the package underneath him that prove that this is a series veteran that is still very, very much capable of fighting with the best. Because, as we said, like, he fended off Lundgaard for a good while until kind of he started losing the rears a bit and slipped up at the end of the second stint. He was there or thereabouts with Palou for a while, held off Malukas very cannily in the last couple of laps, despite quite a deficit of push to pass. So this was good to see, because this is a team that has been in a very bad spot and seemingly getting in a worse spot no matter how much they try and change it. So yeah, I'm happy for Graham. Like, clearly he was pretty fired up, in the way that he was addressing all the BS and stuff. He's still got a passion for this stuff, and this was a really good drive, and just a sign that maybe this regression we've seen is possibly being halted and is not a continuation of a theme that will lead him into that retirement that people talk about.
I think the concern is, from an RLL perspective, though, is there was pace on one car, but Louis Foster in particular was absolutely nowhere. I mean, he was lapped after about 30 laps, and Mick Schumacher was also a lap down, seemingly with little pace. Schumacher qualified 20th and Foster 22nd. So, like Aaron McLaren, well, you can be quick on one car, but why aren't you quick on the others? And that's something that Rahal said they just don't know either. Like, they copied his setup coming into the race, and yet they're just completely opposite ends of the spectrum pace-wise, and that's something they really need to dig down on, because it's not the first time we've seen this. Like, Foster was qualifying very well last year at points, and the others weren't. So they ultimately need to work out why that is. And I would say slightly concerning. There are so many cases of things happening at that team, and they can't quite work out what or why.
I think the fact that they all copied Rahal's setup and had the issues, and the cars clearly didn't have the same speed, was probably the most concerning thing, because it wasn't like they just didn't have the speed and were kind of, in the mid-teens. Like, they were pretty much dead last the entire day, those two. I mean, I think Foster qualifying 22nd, actually being out-qualified by Schumacher, that's obviously not what we were used to in his rookie season last year, because he was, World Bar Portland made the fast 12 on road courses. So that was a bit of a shock, really, and he was just fighting at the back the entire day. So yeah, I think that was quite a concern, and this is a continual issue with RLL, as I mentioned, that they can't figure out why they're good, and then now they've got to figure out not only why they were good, but why they were so bad in the very opposite end of the spectrum at the other side, which is why, like, this weekend, ultimately you're going to have the sweeter end of bittersweet, but it could be a bit bittersweet as well, because I think there's quite a lot of confusion there.
There were 2 big incidents this weekend which really stopped the chances of 2 drivers who pretty heavily favoured for a strong result this weekend, which is pretty worth touching on. First one being Scott McLaughlin, who had a really heavy accident in second practice early on Saturday, where you've probably seen it already, but coming into turn 1, hits the grass and then kind of violently spins into a turn 1 barrier, and his car kind of just goes through the barrier and catches into the catch fencing as it kind of lands on the other side. Thankfully, McLaughlin and Power, who'll get to in a minute, were completely fine, and again, testament to IndyCar safety for that one, considering that they were both able to walk out from that accident okay. But I mean, first, it was a really frightening shunt from McLaughlin, and yeah, most important thing is he's okay. And obviously, from that point, really made it a difficult weekend. Qualified 14th in the car he basically hadn't really run before, because qualifying was his first competitive session since they had to go to that backup tub, and then ended up 16th after quite a fortunately quiet race.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those accidents where you start getting random major worldwide news outlets like posting the videos and posting articles. IndyCar star Scott McLaughlin suffers horror crash, that sort of thing. And I mean, it was a funny one, because he kind of kept going on about the fact it really didn't feel that dramatic. And I mean, the car kind of would have proven that because it was kind of still intact, which ultimately, because it, as much as McLaughlin plays it down, it was a terrifying accident, is obviously more credit to the safety and durability of these cars. I mean, it was quite ridiculous, really, seeing how intact the car still was as it was pulled basically out of the fence. But yeah, it was a freak one, really. Like, it was his mistake dipping the wheel and then just hurtling backwards. And ultimately, and I don't know whether this is something the track will look at, the way that he kind of exited, like, because he went a little bit, did he go through some gravel? There is some gravel there, isn't there?
Yeah, small, but not much.
Not much gravel. Like, it wasn't enough to halt his speed. And then as he kind of transitions from the gravel to the grass, that's where the car bounces and ultimately vaults over the tyre barrier. And I know, obviously, because it has gained a lot of traction online and it's got millions of views on IndyCar's page and stuff, people are like, oh, the fence hasn't done its job. And I actually feel like the fence did do its job because, okay, McLaughlin's gone a little bit through the fence and has kind of ended up in the bushes, which was quite a sight. But ultimately, like, if the fence was not like in a position where it was going to give a little bit like that, and it's not like the fence broke and he went flying through and ended up in the trees. Like, the fence still caught him, which is the job of a catch fence. Ultimately, it's like, and McLaughlin said this, like, it's a dangerous sport, and like, you're ultimately never gonna, like, not every single danger ultimately can be negated. And thankfully, IndyCar do a remarkable job at making it as safe as it possibly can be, but it's never going to be 100% safe, and you're not going to be able to cover every eventuality. And I think in this situation, contrary to some of the criticism from people who see it and see how dramatic a sight it is that a car's halfway through the fence, I do ultimately think everything did its job. I don't know what your view is on that, but I think it was kind of, I mean, the fact that he walks out and he's safe is a success.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody walks out of an accident completely okay, ultimately the safety elements have done its job, I think, personally, would be my view.
Yeah, simple as that.
Same as obviously Will Power, not as dramatic of a crash. Obviously, in qualifying, Group 1 his brakes seemingly stopped working and ploughed into the turn 5 barrier at Charlotte's Web. Again, he got out all right, a bit of a lengthy delay to qualifying, but meant he started 23rd, recovered to 12th on Sunday for somebody who's had, I think he's finished top 5 in Barber in the last 6 years or something, or the last 5 years, which is really, really impressive. But I mean, this one obviously wasn't his fault, but his Andretti life so far has been full of crashes, not necessarily all his fault, some of which have been, but yeah, that was another difficult moment, which really kind of put any good chances of results to bed, especially considering there was no cautions during the race.
It's kind of become one of those cases, like, if he doesn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all, because, yeah, okay, he's had some incidents that are his fault, but I mean, this was, yeah, I've really felt for him because this was his first taste of an Andretti car on a road course. Obviously, I think he'd said kind of before the race that it was going to be quite a telling weekend for their chances, and I think after Friday he was, I think he felt they were maybe lacking a bit of speed. He didn't mind the balance of it. And I think ultimately he felt he had a car that was capable for the fast 6. And yeah, I mean, what can you say? Like, I know ultimately, again, like this time the tyre barriers did their job because he ultimately hurtled off track at some speed. And it was a very, very big impact. And again, the car held up perfectly, and all credit has to go to IndyCar Dallara again, that these kind of magnitude of accidents can be, they can happen. The driver is walking away and talking to the press within 5 minutes, and it's quite impressive. Just another step back, more points lost in what he feels like is a championship bid that is possible. And we actually spoke to him in midweek on Tuesday of race week ahead of Barber about why he believes Andretti can be a championship contending force now, plus some of the differences that he has experienced so far at Andretti since joining from Penske.
This year, I really believe they're in a position to win a championship, but next year, for absolutely.
You said pre-season that you felt like Andretti could be a serious contender within 3 years, and then after Arlington, you revised that to say that you felt that could be the case this year. So why do you feel that way so soon after only 3 races with the team?
Because one of those races was a short oval and we were contending for a win there. And that was a weakness of last year. And then You know, oh man, I feel like I could have contended for a win at every race this season. So the pace is there, the ingredients are there to contend for a championship. It's been strong. Obviously, this is the next discipline coming up will be, you know, even more telling. Like, you know, where do we stand on road courses? That was a place that the team thought they needed to work on last year. So, yeah, that's why I said that. I'm like, you know, we're there. I mean, the team is leading the championship. It's right there. Kyle's leading the championship. You know, I've had two rough races at the beginning. You know, if I just finish Phoenix, I'm right there. Yeah, so that's the reason I said that, because I believe that.
And then, I mean, you spoke, I think, pre-season about, you know, you'd not had much time to assess what the change had really been like, going obviously from Penske to Andretti, but now you've had a few race weekends to kind of evaluate. What are some of the differences in processes, the car, just the big things that have maybe been big changes to get used to making this transition this year?
They definitely do things a different way, there's no question, but their preparation and they're very, very well put together team. I tell them, I said, you got everything you need to win a championship. The way they do their debriefs is very military-like. They certainly have good processes put in place. Not quite as lax in that respect as Penske. They definitely have more people there. It's interesting. Yeah, I can see why we're running at the front, to be honest. Like, the team is very good. I am very impressed. And we're improving as well as we go here, doing a lot of work. You know, obviously they've had also feedback from someone from another team that's been in another team for a long time. So sort of giving feedback on how the car feels from what I'm used to and trying to get it closer to what I'm used to just make it a bit easier for me to drive is, I think, something that is good for the team directionally. I think Andretti's always been one of the top teams, but there's only been two teams winning championships. But this year, we're there already. We've made big gains straight away, you know, immediately.
Right, we'll go through the finishing order and we'll briefly touch on some other drivers we think are worth mentioning. And the podium was Palou, Lundgaard, and Rahal. Fourth place was David Malukas, and I feel like I'm saying this every week, which is a great thing. These quietly good weekends from Malukas are exactly what you're looking for. He's not making the headlines every week, but that's absolutely fine. But he's now lies fourth in the standings after that result. It feels like he's maximising it pretty much every weekend. He's qualifying well once again, this time in second, and he genuinely seems like the lead Penske driver so far this year, dare I say it.
Yeah, this has been genuinely really, really impressive. And I know it's not like, oh my God, he's gone and won the first four races, but to just be this reliable, this consistent, this fuss-free early on, really, like, got into the Fast Six for a third time in these first four races, front row for the second time in these first four races, and I think doing so on a road course as well, and kind of really standing up to the Ganassis. And I know there's a bit of a caveat that him and Palou used fresh tyres versus some of those behind on used alternates in that final round of qualifying. But still, to have got to that point as well and to have only been like just over a tenth behind Palou was, again, a really, really good effort. And race day was okay, quiet. And to be fair, he did almost make his way to the podium past Rahal later on. Didn't quite get it done. But to have been so comfortably the best driver on that team again against two guys who are very much bedded in there, who've had so much pedigree and success over their time at Penske already, I just think is super, super impressive. I genuinely can't say how impressed I am. Like, I think we all expected that there might be some streakiness, but the Malukas that we sometimes saw at Foyt, where there were kind of off weekends and a little bit erratic, we've not really, like, I know he obviously had the lockup and tyre delamination in St. Pete, but that was relatively minor in the scheme of things. This has been a real mature and measured start that I'm really impressed by.
Yeah, I think he's done very, very well. We had an unsung hero for the first four races. David Malukas is certainly my pick. And Kyle Kirkwood finishes fifth place, and I think this is a really, really important result for Kyle Kirkwood. His fourth top five to start the season. He still leads the championship over Palou by just 2 points now after Palou's victory. But Barber was a track which Andretti had really struggled at. Road courses, we know, are still the team's kind of downfall in the grand scheme of things. And It felt like Kirkwood had really maximised the result, and there was a really important result for him to achieve, because ultimately, if he is going to challenge for a championship, road courses will be the sticking point in his bid. And if he's getting top 5 on road courses where the team aren't strong at, that's going to be a huge factor, assuming that he continues his really impressive form on street courses and the overall trajectory continues as it is. So we're kind of having two seemingly break away a little bit in the championship, but another really impressive weekend for Kirk. We started the year superbly, and this is a really significant result, I think, if we're looking at the wider picture of what his year could look like.
And if they continue the form we saw at Phoenix on short ovals, I really wouldn't be surprised if these continue to be the two who break away. Whether they fight, I'm not sure. Like, obviously, Palou is so dominant on road courses, and obviously his weaker disciplines, he doesn't really have one. Like, I guess Andretti is so good on street courses, you could suggest Ganassi is a step behind, but Palou is still pretty strong on street courses. He's obviously seemingly cracks ovals now. So I just think the fact that Ganassi and Palou don't have as glaring a weakness as Andretti necessarily, not that it's necessarily a weakness of Kirkwood's as such, but that the team just aren't front running on these road courses. I mean, to be fair, like, Kirkwood used the used alternates in qualified 5th, could have been a little bit, could have been in the pole fight. Ultimately, you got out qualified by Rahal on the used alternates anyway. So yeah, you're probably right, he did maximize. Do you remember, like, just over 2 years ago when we were talking about the fact that his only 2 top 5 finishes were his 2 wins after that first season with Andretti?
Times change.
He is just the complete package now. Like, I know, okay, maybe he needs a road course. He's not got a road course podium, has he? But yeah, like, four top 5s to start the year. He's so consistent now. Like, I know we need to see it over the course of the season because of how himself a little bit, mostly the team, dropped off late last season. But such an impressive start. Okay, started last season really impressively too, but there just seems to be more, I don't know, there's just more authority about it, I feel, this year. And we didn't actually see him after lap 1 really at Barber, but I guess that was credit to just the quiet and measured race that he put in.
Kirkwood and Palou dominating the start of the season. Where have I seen this from before? But look, you have Long Beach. Okay, that might not be negated by Palou's strength for the GP. 500, bit of a lottery. Detroit, defending winner. Gateway, defending winner. If you go to a summer with a kind of a decent points lead, where we could be in for an interesting battle as we kind of head to the road course end of the season, really. So, yeah, interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out. As you kind of said, let's hope Kirkwood doesn't have that kind of fall off we saw towards the end of last year, because we could be in for a really good championship battle. As things currently stand. 6th place was our latest friend of the show, Marcus Armstrong. If you haven't caught it already, he joined us last week to debrief the Armstrong ability. And the week after, it's Armstrong ability supremo. Really, we didn't see any of him. I can barely tell. Oh no, he's running that really weird livery. But I couldn't tell you what livery he's running, but I could. It was that really Kenny Chesney, funky looking livery. But anyway, yeah, that's about as Armstrong ability as you get. I agree.
I probably would, to be fair, because even qualifying 4th, I don't think we really saw much about. I actually thought Kirkwood qualified 4th on Saturday, and then I looked at the order and Armstrong's 4th. So yeah, like, he dropped back a couple of positions, but it's been a really, really good start to the season. I think St. Pete will frustrate him looking back at just how that transpired, obviously dropping back quite significantly after the little kerfuffle with Ericsson and losing points there. But I don't know if you can tell me where he is in the standings, but it's been a really, really solid start to the year.
I have a guess. He's more fun.
6th?
No, he's 9th.
He's 9th, is he?
I guess he is only 1 point off 7th.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's St. Pete. It's so close at this point. But I would just say, like, I hope people enjoyed that episode with him. I would advise you to go and listen if you have not listened yet, because it's not a particularly time relevant one, because we kind of just dissect his growth as an IndyCar driver, where our podcast famed Armstrong ability came from. We genuinely got into some really good detail, and he kind of really bought into the whole thing, really, in terms of kind of really giving us some great insights. And I found him quite almost unique as a guest in the way that he kind of just analyzes stuff. He's got a very analytical brain. I think his racing intellect was very clear during that episode. I just really enjoyed his perspective on his racing. Really, I thought it was quite unique in a certain way that you will probably only really gather if you listen to that episode. But he's a fascinating guy, and I think it validated a lot of what we've spoken about with him, that he is a really, really canny racer.
Yeah, and you get to listen to the all-important music choices. His were very funky. And when I find out about his NFL obsession, he goes into so much detail on that as well. So make sure you tune in on that.
That to me also kind of spoke to this real, like, analytical, always switched on brain that he has, no matter what it is, racing, sport. Like, this guy he's clever. I don't know what he's like educationally, but in a sporting sense, he is a clever guy.
Scott Dixon was 7th. A very late pit stop for Scott Dixon on his opening stint. Lap 17. That's a bit unfamiliar for Dixon at this stage. I mean, he qualified 13th, which is probably one of his better qualifying results this year, to be honest. So maybe that explains why. But a rare alternate strategy less race for Dixon.
Yeah, I mean, he's still not made the top 12 in qualifying yet this year. So, yeah, I mean, even last year, I feel like he wasn't qualifying particularly well, but he was still making the top 12. I don't know the record, but it felt like probably about half the time. This time, it's like I don't even look at him in the qualifying groups now and think like, yeah, Dixon will get through there. Like, it's not really a surprise when he gets knocked out. I don't know what's happening there, but certainly some qualifying struggles. Like, you always trust him to make his way up in races, but I feel like even then, with the field so competitive, like he's limiting himself to days like 7th place, a little bit out of the top 5. And I will say on that point about the field being really competitive, I kept looking through the order yesterday, and like you look down the order and you really can't pick out, like, there's maybe a selection of like 5 drivers that you would think like, okay, you don't necessarily expect them to be in the top 10, but there's probably, I would say, at least 3/4 of this field you look at and think, yeah, like you finishing in the top 10 would not be a surprise, which always means you're going to have people like I know Award finishing down his 17th is a shock and McLaughlin down his 16th, but I feel like we're now at a point, especially with only 25 cars, the grid being condensed a little bit, you're going to always get drivers in the mid-teens, low teens that you're like, oh gosh, that could really cost you in a bid for a top 5 in a championship, because it is just that competitive. And I know people always talk about IndyCar so competitive, and I feel like Will Power doesn't even need to be asked the question about IndyCar's competitiveness to say, man, this feels tough. That wasn't an Aussie accent at all, but yeah, like it just genuinely feels like this field is so strong now. Ultimately, still got the same guys winning races and Palou dominating, which I guess makes his form and what he's producing over recent years even more impressive. But this is a good field, this.
8th place, Santino Ferrucci. Pretty good result there for Ferrucci. He ran well at Barber, was it 2 years ago? He was leading for a little bit of the race. His first top 10 of the year. It was kind of a tricky-ish start to the year, but I mean, that's encouraging because, again, road course form was kind of dipped in recent years, particularly after that particularly quietly impressive 24 season. So good run there from Ferrucci, which is encouraging. Then we have Marcus Ericsson in 9th place and his third top 10 of the year, which really beats his total for 2025. And this is just the results that Ericsson needs, like just a quiet top 10 day. Like if he's looking longer picture, trying to keep his seat, these results are kind of important. Like, yes, he'll need more than that, but considering how bad last year was, I think these results help. And just having that kind of consistency and relative pace every week is just, it's small, but it helps.
I was going to say, do you think this is enough? Like, I think, like, ultimately, this is a lot better than what we saw last year. And this is a clear upturn. And I'm happy for him because last year was a real struggle. He's clearly put in such relentless work over the off-season to put it right, as he did before last year, and it just went still very wrong. But things are certainly paying off, changes they've made there. But Andretti are going to be more ambitious, and him finishing 9th, or, you know, even when in the last couple of rounds he's qualified well, he's still dropped back a little bit. So he probably has to improve in race trim a little bit. Ultimately, only finished 3 places over Power, who's above Power, who started 15 places beneath him. So I feel like I'm being harsh, but like you're still going to I want to see more from Ericsson, but ultimately this is a good start given how bad last year was.
Kind of similar case with Joseph Newgarden and 10th, really. Like qualified 9th, finished 10th, no dramas, which I guess when you look at last year, a race without drama is probably a good race, but we probably need to see a little bit more. Just considering where maybe Malukas is pace-wise, you expect Newgarden to be a bit higher up the order.
Yeah, basically like retweet the points made on Ericsson. Apart from the fact, obviously, Newgarden, we know front running on ovals, he obviously won Phoenix, but yeah, I think road and street courses, like I just don't look at him as a contender anymore. Like he just doesn't factor for me against your Palots, your Lundgaards, your Kirkwoods, even people like an Armstrong or those sorts of drivers. Like I just see them as stronger forces on particularly road courses than Newgarden.
So we have Rossi 11th, Power 12th, Rosenqvist 13th. No top 10s in the first 4 races of Felix Rosenqvist, by the way, which is slightly concerning.
Yeah, I mean, qualified 18th. Like it's been a slow start to the year for him, especially like, and I think we kind of in our predictions favoured Armstrong over him, not really for any reason other than the fact, as I've just mentioned, how many drivers you could argue would make it into the top 10 of the championship or whatever. But he's been outshone so far this season, I would say.
VK 14th, which is probably a bit of a relative disappointment considering his previous record at Barber and how he ran last year. Like he was a bit too quiet. I think a lot of people, I know we'll get into it in a minute, but wants a little bit more from him. But I mean, it's not a bad result, but VK at Barber is just one of those track driver combinations you expect him to do better at. That's simply it.
Yeah, I think there was a thing, I think it was put to Palou after qualifying that, I don't know, it was either 9 teams made the Fast 12, or it might have even been 9 teams qualified inside the top 10. And Hunkos was the one who, they were the only team who didn't make it. And Palou was like genuinely quite shocked that VK wasn't in the Fast 12, which I think was quite telling. I know he had a spin, I think it was, I've got it written here, lap 36. I don't know if that's right or not. But
yes, he's trying to overtake
Rossi.
Rossi, it might be Rossi, yeah.
Tried to go down the inside of Rossi and kind of misjudged it a bit, spun, a bit clumsy to be honest. But yeah, given he had pace and had shown pace through practice as well, he's probably going to be a bit disappointed with this as a weekend. But actually, to be fair, he didn't finish that far behind Rossi anyway, so he didn't lose out that much by the spin. But yeah, I put him
he was
6th, I think.
3 seconds off 10th place. So
yeah.
Like
could have been a top 10, which again would have been a good drive from. He started 16th.
Yeah, Grosjean was 15th, which was a bit weird because he qualified 6th and kind of ran pretty well in the opening stint, and then he just ended up at 15th. Your face suggests you didn't know how either, so we'll probably
I'm not
move
sure.
On. Encouraging qualifying.
Yeah, I feel like we saw a lot of it, like particularly early in the race. Like he seemed to have a bit of a tough start, couldn't quite fire up at the beginning of the race, and then really came back into his own and started fighting back. But I don't know. Like it's a bit cruel, but when something like that happens with Coyne, I kind of immediately go to if they had an issue in the pits, maybe. Like obviously, as one of the lower funded teams, we're used to seeing them maybe not be quite as smooth in the pits.
And then we have McLaughlin, Award, Siegel, Rasmussen, Simpson, who got penalised and placed in Arlington, by the way, which you didn't mention for his start of the kerfuffle at the back, which caused the caution in the last lap.
And that took 10 days. It shouldn't have even taken 10 minutes. I mean, I could have looked at 10 seconds of that clip and knew he should have been penalised. But, I mean, dropping in one place, I mean, I would have, because it's happened late in the race, can they not give out, IndyCar doesn't really do it, but a grid drop feels like it would be more apt in that situation because of one place penalty for absolutely ramming into the back of a driver and causing two.
And the only person who got promoted was Felix Rosenqvist, who had that BS penalty anyway.
I would just touch on from that stretch of drivers, by the way, Dan McLaughlin. He didn't make any progress. In fact, he did well to qualify 14th, obviously after the accident, good recovery, but dropped 2 positions in the race to 16th. It's been not a brilliant start to the season. Again, like him and Newgarden feel like they've had relatively similar starts to the season. Like McLaughlin actually struggling a bit more than Newgarden. He is how many points behind? 14 points behind. He's still 7th in the standings, but as we've kind of said, Malukas has been the standout guy in that squad, and it's been not quite the start to this rebound year that I would have expected from McLaughlin. Like he's just not really. I guess since St. Pete, he's just not really factored that much. Like obviously Phoenix was the big one where, you obviously expect McLaughlin to be front running, and he just wasn't really a factor in that. And Arlington was obviously a tough weekend as well after the qualifying crash. So yeah, just has to still neaten up that bit more, I think.
And then we'll finish off with Collett, and then Rob, Hauger, Schumacher, Foster. Those last four were all a lap down. So top 3 drivers of the weekend, I think Palou is the Stonewall number 1. Unlike other weeks, though, I feel like this is a bit more open. I would go Rahal number 2, and I would go... That's a bit boring, but I guess I'll go Lundgaard number 3.
Yeah, I'm tempted to just go the podium, to be honest. Like, because ultimately, Lundgaard would have been quite a bit further ahead of Rahal in the race. I think, obviously, you could penalise him for his qualifying, but at the same time, I just really enjoyed the way that he raced to really decisively get up to the front. So I'm just going to go for the podium. Very, very boringly.
That's very boring. Is your unsung hero any more exciting?
Santino Ferrucci's my unsung hero, just because I think he's had a tough start to the season. I think Collett at points actually has outshone him a little bit, so this was a good rebound. I mean, finishing 1 position after the fast 6, still keeping that top 10 in the race was a result it felt like he needed, and the sort of race we genuinely didn't really see from him last year, because he had that obviously mid-season phase where he was really, really good, and then other than that it was a pretty poor season. So this was a bit more like what we would see from him in 24, which I think is encouraging for the Foyt squad.
Rogue shout, Carl Kirkwood. Didn't really see any of him. Needed a strong road course result to kind of reaffirm that he wants to be a championship contender, and quietly went around business and maximised this weekend on a track type that I think is best ever finishes 4th. He's only had a handful of top 5s. So
yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, like we didn't see him after lap 1, so suitably unsung.
And then funny moments. I'll bring one to the table to start off with. We have a few press conference ones this week, but my first one's going to be from Álex Palou's post-race press conference. Now, what they do is they bring out a team personnel alongside the winning driver. So usually for Palou, that's Barry Wanzo. It's on occasion been Chip Ganassi. But this week they got Julian Robertson, who is their lead engineer on the car. Now, Julian has never done it before. And then Álex we'll play in the clip shortly after this, but was saying to him about, you need to be careful, Julian, of what you tell people, because you speak too much, Julian, that you're going to start telling everybody important information. It's like, it's not that I don't tell the truth to the media, but I don't tell them everything, and I can't afford you to do the same, Julian. We're playing the clip, it's really quite funny, but yeah, Palou introducing his lead engineer to the press conference, and his censorship program was rather amusing. So that's my first one this week.
And wonderful to be joined by Julian Robertson, who's the longtime lead engineer on the 10 car, which I believe this is your first appearance now with Álex. So we're kind of
it's a first media appearance for Julian.
At all? Yeah. You got dragged in at the last second?
Yeah.
Okay.
How did that happen?
I don't know.
Who told you? Colin?
Yeah.
Blame Colin.
So we needed somebody.
Yeah. All right.
From your perspective, Julian, what was it about this win that makes it special?
Wait, Julian, don't say too much. So this is.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So you need to kind of talk, but don't say exactly. He just always says the truth.
Yeah.
And it's good to. I mean, I don't lie. I'm not lying when I talk to you guys, but I hide a couple of stuff here and there. So I don't want Julian to now tell you the springs we run, where did we struggle too much or not. But yes.
So Julian, what springs were you guys running again?
We had the right springs on, we just didn't have the right tires in the middle.
Yeah.
That was very funny. Like, I think you could probably tell from the clip, but there's actually some genuine concern from Palou. Like, don't give away our secrets. I think before I get onto the very main one, a couple of other ones. Marcus Armstrong's intro was very strange when they kind of run through the starting field and they say, Archie O'Reilly, Manchester, England, that sort of thing. But Armstrong was like, Marcus Armstrong, Christchurch, New Zealand. But rather than Meyershank Racing, he said, world-class guitar hero, I think. Don't really know why. Don't know whether it was something to do with the Kenny Chesney livery or I thought they might have made a mistake by putting in and he'd just been messing about at the when they were filming them at the start of the year. But that was funny. Another moment, I don't know if you saw this. Palou was almost brutally assaulted by the confetti when he stood on top of his car to celebrate after the race. It's like a hurricane of confetti. He was almost blown off his car. Like he was there just like holding onto his hat and trying not to fall off. So I don't know whether someone at Barber's very desperate for Palou to I don't know, to somehow be prevented from his success by injury by confetti. But I think the standout funny moment this week has to be Will Power's midweek press conference, to which he was 5 minutes late, then disconnected because he was in the car. So he was on his phone, he was driving back home, and he didn't have his video on. And then he's really trying really, really incessantly to get his video on, fiddling about with some sort of phone holding contraption thing. Couldn't do that. Has loads of technical issues, all because he'd run out of fuel on his way to the petrol station or gas station, as Americans would say. And yeah, it's just honestly hilarious. So here is the entire story from the press conference in midweek with Will Power, and also a second clip with part 2 that he told the media about on Friday in the post-practice press conference. So enjoy this. It's just classic Will Power.
So I'll set my phone up so I can. Volume cannot be lowered. Sorry, can you hear me? I'm trying to set this up. As funny as this is, you get these clamps to set your phone up to put on video, but can you hear me?
Yeah, you
No.
sound fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm trying to get it so I got video there, Dave.
Yeah, we appreciate the hard work that's going into this.
Oh my God. You know why I'm in this predicament? I ran out of bloody gas. I literally driving up the driveway of the gas station and the thing. So I had to go in, buy a gas can, put some gas in the thing, drive it up to the fuel barrels to get some gas. And, that's why I'm sort of running a little bit behind here.
Well, you know what? Better now than on Sunday.
Yeah, no. I'm pretty good at fuel save. But I don't know my road car as well as I know my race car. I thought I was literally a few meters short. That's how close I like to run it, Sorry. I'm trying to get this clamp to work because what happens, it presses the buttons when you put it on. You guys love a bit of a disaster in a press conference, right?
It's all good.
Bit of stuff going on. It presses the camera button when you put it on there. There you go. Good on you. Yeah, really, really solid thing there. All right. I think I got it sorted. So let's turn the video on.
There it is.
Look at that, huh? That was a big deal.
Well done. Good job.
Yeah, sorry. I just had my elbow drained. I had a thing on my elbow. See, they drained it. So I can, just like to throw that out there. I'm sure no one's going to say a thing about it. This is the right forum to tell people about health issues.
Yeah. You're oversharing, but you know what? This is why we're here. It's fine.
That's been my life. I bloody overshare everything. It's always just everyone knows everything's going on in my life. It's kind of funny. Yeah. Anyway, what was the question?
Thanks, Will. Appreciate you fighting the tech. Cheers, Dave.
Thanks,
yeah,
sir.
you got it, man. Yeah, the tech is quite complicated for us guys in our 40s.
Mm-hmm. Hey, just to clarify, this actually did happen because, can you not see it?
Oh my gosh, she sent the bloody. Why would she do such a thing?
Hang on.
That's my wife for you.
Hang on here.
Yeah, your thing doesn't work.
It doesn't work with this, does it? That's
Fighting the tech, Dave. You're in your 40s, fighting the tech.
but now I'm fighting the tech.
I had a couple of fuel issues. I sent my neighbor, an old guy, he actually used to work for Penske as a fabricator, and I was at the kart track building a go-kart, to run the next day. And I said, can you go get some distilled water for the radiator? And he took off. It was taking forever. I'm like, where is this guy? He came back. Did you check the fuel light before you came? And he ran out of gas in my car. He took my car because I picked him up in the middle of the intersection. So when I ran out of gas in my wife's car, I was like, called him and said, I just ran out of gas. He was mad though, because he was like, people were beeping and he didn't have his phone. He left it at the kart track with me. It's funny knowing the guy because Mike is, just standing on the side of the road. He said I had the cap out and I was just going like this, and eventually someone stopped and got him the gas. I shouldn't laugh. Honestly, he was mad. He won't let me live that one down. But so yeah, it was two in a row. It's pretty interesting.
Okay, let's move on to the podium predictor tournament for Barber, and a pretty high scoring week, as you can imagine, because basically everybody went for Palou, because why wouldn't you? That's the obvious choice. So fans went McLaughlin, Palou, Lundgaard, which earned them 4. I went for Palou, McLaughlin, O'Ward, which earned me 3. Archie went for Palou, McLaughlin, Lundgaard, which earned you 5. Will Buxton, our championship leader, went for McLaughlin, O'Ward, and Kirkwood, which was a shameful 0. Tom Gamer went for Palou, Kirkwood, Lundgaard, which is 5. James Scott went for Palou, Kirkwood, and Dixon. And the writers went for Palou, Lundgaard, and Dixon, which earned them 6. I'm surprised to see so many Kirkwood shouts this week. That was
I think because he was pretty strong in practice, but we have a comment from Will from before the weekend, finding out that I think he realised that he'd got the last 2 winners right and the top 2 correct for Arlington. Holy shit! I've got 2 winners in a row and top 2 on the podium last week. Crikey! I don't think he's top of the championship anymore, unfortunately.
So should we go bottom to top this week then and create some drama? So Will's gone from first to last with a 0 score.
Brutal.
So him and James are now joint 6th. Then we go on to joint 4th, which are the writers and the fans. So between me and you are Tom. Joint 2nd is Tom and myself, and then you're in the lead. But you're on 16, me and Tom on 15, the writers and the fans on 14, and Will and James on 13. So all within 3 points. It's very, very close.
That is close. This is shaping up nicely.
Yeah, and then we'll go on to the Fast 6 predictor tournament. So I can't really remember what we put. I remember what I put.
Oh, mine was not good.
Well, I went for Palou, McLaughlin, Armstrong, O'Ward, Lundgaard, and Rosenquist. So I only got 2 through Palou and Armstrong.
Yeah, I only got 2 from Palou and Armstrong. I went for Palou, McLaughlin, VK, Armstrong, Lundgaard, and I'm pretty sure that says Foster. Although my whiteboard pen doesn't really work.
So you have the standings up there, do you not?
Yes, so we stay put as we were last week, but you now lead 11-10.
Nice, right. We'll probably also do Long Beach now. So we'll be back to you shortly with our Fast 6 prediction for Long Beach. Whilst we're doing this, I've been going on about the Long Beach qualifying demon that I have found. I have found somebody who's absolutely cracked at Long Beach qualifying. He's never qualified outside the top 10. I think he's been the Fast 6 in all of those like 7 races apart from 2. So who do you think it is?
I mean, my theory off just looking at the last 2 years results is Felix Rosenquist.
I don't know what Felix is doing when he turns up to Long Beach, but my man is cracked at Long Beach qualifying. So is Marcus Ericsson. So something in the Swedish air about qualifying at Long Beach.
So you made that remark to me about the demon. I thought it was Rosenquist, and I still didn't pick him because I've looked at his starts of the season, and it's kind of the opposite of what he's done to start the last couple of seasons. So maybe he's going to end this season as well as he started the last couple.
Right. So let's go through this. So do you want to throw one out there? We'll make our battles. We didn't do this for Barb. We need to make our interesting battles every week.
So you said Rosenquist.
Yeah, that's one of them, yeah.
I think you won't have put Armstrong in that case.
No, I haven't. Okay, cool. So we have a shank battle. It's a good start. Nice battle on there. Have you gone for Kirkwood?
Of course, I have. Yeah,
Predictable. Have you also gone for Palou?
I have. Yes.
Okay, fine. So we've got at least two the same. Do you want to throw one out there in that case?
You're the demon, Ericsson.
Yeah, Ericsson's your demon. He makes it. I think this might be the only time all year I predict Ericsson, but there I makes it for this one.
Go on, throw another out.
Power's going to make it an Andretti triple.
Yeah, I've gone for triple Andretti.
So at least four the same here. So my last five, my last one, I was toying between three different drivers. So this would be interesting. Who have you got?
Yeah, the last, to be fair, I had the triple Andretti and Palou as my shoe-ins, and then it was
So did I.
Malukas.
Oh, so did I.
Oh, dear.
No. So it's literally a shank versus shank battle.
Like McLaughlin obviously is a good street course qualifier, but he was in the fast six last year, but he's not always been that good at Long Beach. So
yeah, my other two were Newgarden, who's qualified. He's been pretty good at Long Beach, but he just hasn't had a good last couple of years there. And we've mentioned his road street course one was a bit patchy, and then my one was Lundgaard, but based on what we were discussing earlier, I just don't think he makes it. So there we are. That's not very exciting. Back to five. We'd gone for a good couple of street where we weren't exactly the same, and now we're back to five the same. But anyway,
teammate battle. I can't even take the lead in Long Beach. I've now got 3 weeks.
Equal it up, though.
Yeah, I've now got 3 weeks to look into Long Beach, so and think, I can't even take the lead. You're going to be leading. You're going to be at least level into May, which is a shame.
That's true. It's kind of slow. We've got one race in 5 weeks or something, so slow down a little bit. But don't worry, we'll have content. Content is yet to be decided, but there will be content. If you are wanting more podcast content from us in the meantime, we will have Indy Next debrief out this week. If you haven't caught that already, me and Archie debrief all the action from every Indy Next weekend. We also speak to some of the top performing drivers from each weekend, so stay tuned for who we're going to have on the show this week. Always great to get some insight. It was a double header, so a very busy weekend at Barber Motorsports Park for Indy Next. But yeah, that's it for Barber. I mean, I think you'll agree, Barber's a great track to drive, but I think for racing, it's just a bit hard to overtake. I think we have a few tracks like that in the calendar. It's a great track. Just I don't think it makes for great IndyCar racing. We've had a bit like last year. We've had a bit of a slower start to the year, but hopefully that means through the month of May that picks up, and then by the end of the season we're having barnstormer after barnstormer. So let's hope we kind of continue the same trajectory. The parallels really are there to last year, aren't they? After the first 3 or 4 races.
Yeah, and I think we might be looking at things a little bit differently if Palou hadn't had that DNF. Well, maybe not if he hadn't had the DNF at Phoenix, to be fair, because, I mean, ultimately, obviously, he would have been ahead of Kirkwood probably, but Kirkwood would have been in touching distance. Like, I looked after Barber last year. Palou did have, I think, a 60-point lead.
60? That was like round 4.
Yeah, but then going into the 500, he had a 97-point lead.
Oh my gosh,
So that's why, I'm hesitant to say there's huge parallels, just purely because he's had that one errant result, but it's quite similar, yeah.
Wow. Right, okay, well, we'll leave it there. You can work out the parallels for yourself. We'll be back next week, obviously, as we are every single week. We don't have anything planned yet, but wait and see. And there'll be something. Hopefully it'll be on Tuesday, hopefully it'll be on time, and hopefully it'll be amazing. But for this time, thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.